Hello, my whatever I'm calling you. Welcome back to this episode, or to this episode in general, because I've already fucked at the beginning. Let's go. Yeah, today this is something that is a very interesting field of research and one that I am invested in emotionally and intellectually. I just find it really, really interesting to think about and talk about. And today I'm drinking hmm, tea. Yeah, today's episode is sponsored by tea. Why not? Tea is lovely. They're not paying me. Big tea isn't. Ooh, big tea. Yeah, they're not paying me. But tea is lovely. So just have some tea. Yeah. So I'm going to be reading an old article that I really, really like. It's been re-uploaded more recently in 2020. So I'm going to get into that. And yeah, I'm just going to get right into it. The article is about astrology, but honestly, it could be about kind of just pick a topic. All right, so here I am. Mm. It's scientific reasons people still believe in astrology from cracked.com, which used to be just a great website, and unfortunately they've just lost a lot of things lately. I don't know, there's a whole story behind it, but whatever. There's a nice little intro, who cares? But starting off at number 5. Cognitive biases are good, actually. The goal here isn't to single out astrology. As I was mentioning, irrational beliefs aren't exactly rare. Americans, anybody, but Americans spend something like 2 billion a year on psychics. And you don't hear a lot about hate crimes committed in the name of astrology. The Zodiac killer named himself after a watch brand, after all. And but but if you're looking for a demonstration of why intelligent people still latch on to beliefs without evidence to support them, astrology has it all, which is why the author chose astrology, obviously. So let's start with your personality is defined by your birth date element. There are a couple of cognitive biases at play here. For one, we have the Barnum effect. We are more inclined to believe in something if we are told it offers specific insight into us as individuals. If I said the average person is masturbated to some weird stuff, you'd blow it off. How would I know, right? But if you had an email that said, I know what you masturbated to last night, you'd be much more likely to start scouring your folder marked just taxes do not open and erasing all the minions joy. Wow, that's anyway, even though it's actually not weird at all. That's pretty freaking weird, dude. It's hard to ignore somebody who claims to know about our deep, true selves. You can see this on almost every Facebook test when those were still a thing, something like 18 years ago. That's why if your zodiac sign insists that you're an honest, loyal person, you're prone to believe it, regardless of whether your everyday life backs that up. Uh, but broad statements like that always work better if the description is vaguely positive, regardless of whether it makes logical sense. Then it goes, even zodiac sign descriptions that include character flaws tend to spin them in a positive way. Scorpios, like their namesake. The scorpion put up an outer shell that may seem prickly, but once you get beyond the shell, you find a loyal, loving person whose passion knows no bounds. Sure. You read that and say, hey, that's true. Everyone says I'm an asshole. But that's surely only because they don't know the real me. Which, again, is me too, but I'm probably not a Scorpio, but could you tell? Actually, here's a test. What's my zodiac sign? If you believe in zodiacs, what is it? Tell me what it is. I ask people this game. I like I say, okay, if it works one way, it should be able to work the other way. If you can tell me about my personality based on my sign, you should be able to tell me what my sign is based on my personality. So I say, give me a personality test. Give me a test. Any question you want to know about my personality. I will answer it as honestly as I can. And then after the personality profile that you build of me with whatever questions you like, make a judgment call. Base your quest, like, what is my sign? It, very strangely, when I ask this to people who are like deep into astrology, many times their first question is something like, are you an air sign? That's not a personality question. For goodness sake. And the first one who ever tried this, it took her 11 guesses, or was it 12? I think it was 12 guesses. No, it was 12 guesses. The second one, it was 10 guesses. So getting better all the time. Yeah. Gonna keep on going. And then there's apophenia. Really interesting psychological phenomenon, apophenia. The brain's tendency to infer a non-existent pattern from statistical noise. That's a result of humans being so great at pattern recognition that sometimes we just can't turn it off. Cavemen noticed that some of the leaves and the brushes outside the cave were disturbed and went hunting anyway and was promptly eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. Other cavemen saw that and never goes out hunting if the leaves outside the cave are disturbed. Sure, it's probably not a saber-toothed tiger every time, but evolutionarily speaking, it's better to be superstitious than suffer for Smilodon. And if you combine the need to make sense of a chaotic universe with our desperate need to understand ourselves, you have a perfect recipe for the pattern in the sky tells me that you're a generous lover or whatever. Today is going to be a good day to take a risk. Whatever the heck that means. Number 4, rituals protect us from rationality, which again is a good thing, or has been historically for our ancestors. We've moved beyond it now. So there's an advantage in having cognitive biases. That's why they persist in the species. Astrology is a type of ritual, and rituals are one way that cognitive biases manifest themselves. We've all got our rituals. Very true. There are small cultural things like wearing the correct colors on game day to help our team win, or personal rituals like putting a ring of human teeth around your bed to distract the tooth goblins if they come in looking for you at night. Which, yeah, funny. The advantage is that rituals allowed us to pass down information while bypassing the need for a written instruction. For example, some ancient Amazonian people ate a plant called manioc, and it's still a major food source in the developing world. Now, the thing about manioc is that if you don't prepare it just right, you'll get cyanide poisoning and die. But at some point, through a long process of trial and error, somebody figured out how to process it to get rid of the pesky cyanide. The process got turned into a sacred ritual, which was passed down through the generations. We didn't have the scientific method or even written language to explain why this worked. All people knew were the stories of those who broke tradition and poisoned the whole tribe, since the effects of cyanide might not appear for years. Build up, I guess. Meanwhile, the people who adhered to the tradition lived on, carried on their genes, taught their successive generations about the importance of ritual or tradition. Find this everywhere. That means that today we have natural biases for separating rituals from logic. No, they can't begin to explain why the alignment of the stars affects your fate. It just does. You don't have to know why to get the benefit. The same as you don't know how to roll, the same as how you roll dead batteries around inside your remote to make them start working again. Even if that goes against everything you know about batteries or electricity. Hey, if it works, it works. Figuring out the why just slows you down, and this part's crazy. By the way, that plant that I've been talking about that contains cyanide, manioc, it's better known in the US as tapioca. So enjoy your bubble tea, yeah. Again, today's episode is sponsored by tea, just the concept of tea. Number 3, fortune telling is pretty useful, but not for telling the future. Love that. Okay, so you say, but why would a ritual persist even after it's been proven not to work? Those tribes saw people die when they didn't prepare the plant in such a certain way, but surely nobody suffered from failing to listen to the stars before making a decision. Excellent point. Well, one theory is that the rituals for divination can be really useful in ways to introduce chaos into the system to beat predictive models. Which is a hell of a sentence. I think I paid a lot of money to go to college so I could say that sentence in that way. Funny. But I basically mean that if you're playing a game in which both players are trying to guess the other's strategy, the best way to make sure your opponent doesn't guess yours is to sometimes play irrationally. For example, the ancient Naskapi people of Canada primarily hunted caribou for food because poutine hadn't been invented yet. Haha. Now, the thing about caribou is that they have a weird aversion to being butchered and eaten. People. So, they tended to avoid areas where hunters had killed them before. To hunt more effectively, the Naskapi would thus burn a caribou bone in a ritual fire and read the burn marks like a map to determine where to hunt next. They didn't know it, But what they were doing was avoiding their own decision-making biases. Caribou cannot predict randomness. So everybody gets to enjoy some delicious caribou pie, steak. I'm not sure I eat caribou. Sure. And maybe, just as importantly, it eliminates indecision. Humans have a terrible tendency to freeze when they come to a fork in the road. When they don't have enough information to make an informed choice in a chaotic universe, you never really know if the outcome of your particular choice in advance, we sometimes just do nothing out of fear. I think it was Aristotle's mule stood between two bales of hay that were completely even, and logically it must starve because it could not make an actual choice. If, however, you can call upon the universe to make the decision for you, then you can take one road or the other with confidence. Was it the right decision? Who knows? But it most certainly better than making no decision at all. Additionally, the ones who continually got lucky enough to always choose the right path, and statistically, eventually it will have happened to more tribes than other, those were the ones who were more successful because their rituals worked better, because their gods were more real, because their gods were the correct gods, and you should worship their gods, make sacrifices to their gods, because hey, it's obviously working for them. You can't argue with logic. And that is one of the huge factors that would have been reinforcing the concept of a god into the minds of humans. Number two, it's cheap and readily accessible. That's not much to do with evolution, I don't think, but let me read through it. So if humans all around the world have been practicing various forms of divination since basically forever, why is astrology specifically so popular? Why does it live on while the I Ching, casting of bones, augury, and butchering of horned she-goats to foretell whether the autumn's harvest shall be sufficient to feed the mewling tots, have been condemned to the garbage disposal of history? Why does almost everyone in America know their star sign, or their rising, or their moon, or whatever the hell? But almost no one makes Super Bowl bets on what a piece of cheese tells them. There's a link there. I'm sure it's something. It looks like there are a few factors at play here. We millennials, sure, are the least religious generation since the next one. Good for us. There are lots of reasons for that, but my suspicion is that it has something to do with having easy access to information and seeing religious extremists fly planes into buildings on TV when we were in elementary school. I mean, I feel like it's more than that. I'm going to cover that, I guess, more in my conclusion, but sure, let's say that that's a reason right now. But we also consider ourselves spiritual, a human trait. It's not special to millennials. That's something everyone does, but because we have been informed by millions of years of evolution that have encouraged, as we've seen so far, allowing for more spiritual understanding in our day-to-day lives. Consider ourselves more spiritual, possibly because we're the most stressed out about our future. Again, no, that's not why we're spiritual. It has helped some people about being stressed out, but it's not the primary reason. It's not like we're stressed about the future, therefore we decide cognitively to turn to a spiritual path and understanding, and then astrology makes the most sense to us. That's kind of misquoted here. I disagree with that entirely. This makes sense because my personal retirement plan is to die exhausted from work on the floor of an Amazon anti-climate disaster dome and water extraction facility on Mars. We don't buy into religion and all of its baggage. Many of us don't, but there's still a healthy proportion of the population that does. Portion, not proportion. But we still need something to give us answers. Again, no, I feel like you're putting the horse before the cart before the horse on that one. And well, astrology doesn't exactly ask for a lot of return. It doesn't require much in the way of time, materials, or codes of conduct, unless you're deep into it, because oh my goodness, I know some people who are just very heavily into it. And you don't have to find a caribou to burn its skeleton. Just get a free horoscope app on your phone, or watch a YouTube app, or read an article, or know a friend who was like, oh, Jupiter returning is going to mean that you are going to have a life-changing relationship that isn't going to last long. Sure. There was a time when making a ritual costly helped convince people of its value. We still have that bias. It's partly with the sunken cost fallacy, but if something is more expensive, you tend to trust it more because human beings are silly. We're programmed by our own evolution. You wanted to believe in a fortune that required the sacrifice of a perfect. Yeah. You wanted to believe in a fortune that required the sacrifice of a perfectly good deal for the same reason you want to believe that your $1,000 iPhone is better than the rest. But in an era in which information is usually free and always one click or tap away, why use divination method with a bunch of extra steps? And number one, ultimately, it's about validation. I'm a July woman. I was born with my heart. Never mind. In an age of extreme customization and ads tailored to you based on your taste in music and deepest sexual nightmares, it makes sense that this part of astrology appeals to people. It plays to one of the central human paradoxes: the need to be both a unique individual and a part of a group. It's like how we're obsessed with our Hogwarts house or those unspeakably awful shirts based on your birth month, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. In fact, the validation aspect is probably the most important one. It describes us to ourselves and also gives us permission to accept it. It's not my fault I constantly say horrible things. I was born in July. In this way, astrology offers a comforting certainty in a world that increasingly feels outside of our control, even if it's total BS, which it absolutely is. And that's the end of the article. So we go back here. Excuse. So yeah, that's it. That's that. That's basically why, or that's a way to understand how and why we've been why we've been informed to behave like magic and ritual and all these things work all the time, because evolutionarily it's been more advantageous to it's been more advantageous for us. But I personally don't feel like that's very useful. Excuse me, I'm back. So we have moved beyond that. Sorry, that one. But we've moved beyond that. And I think this is a good thing. I think that it is better to look at the world as it really is and eliminate the illusions. You've heard that seeing is believing. You've probably also heard that believing is seeing. Believing is seeing, I think, is the far more insidious affectation because it's true. If you choose to believe something enough, you'll see it. You'll feel it. You'll have a religious experience. And your religious experience, surprise, surprise, will be whichever God you already believed in. That's why every single person, whenever they have a religious experience, they never come out. No Christian in the deep South has ever come out of a near-death experience and said, "Oh, I know what the true religion is. It's Shinto." Ha! Who would have guessed? It always enforces what you already think is the case. Isn't that interesting? There are other causes, of course, but those are the main ones. It's magical thinking. And as we just saw in the article read below, it's because of evolution. So I'm not going to say that it's individually dumb of us. It's not your fault. It's just the way you are. It's like asking basically, why does a person walk when driving would be far more effective? Because one is how we evolved, and the other is the way that we allowed ourselves to adapt to the world. Obviously, walking, driving, and magical thinking versus completely atheistic perspective of the world are just worlds apart in terms of metaphor. So excuse me on that one, is a little far out there. But for me at least, and I mean, you probably, if you're watching this, you all know about my whole optimistic nihilism rant and everything. It definitely goes hand in hand with that. So for me, I don't perceive of anything beyond this. I'm not looking for a god or the gods. I'm not thinking about which spirits are informing or which decisions. For me, it is all just this. It's all just this. And that's enough for me. That's much more than enough for me because this is beautiful. I know why I feel spiritual connections. I mean, I don't. When I use the word spiritual or magic, typically I'm referring to something that feels important without my being able to explain why. I look up at the night sky whenever I'm in some rural area or when I'm watching water tumble over stone in a river in the mountains. It feels important. It feels beautiful, magical. There's a spiritual, I feel a connection to it. Maybe it's because the water is clean and clear. And if I know that, then I know maybe it's safer for drinking. There's a reason you never feel a spiritual experience when seeing dirty water, unless you're built differently than other people, I guess. But though there is a rational explanation behind every magical phenomenon in history, that doesn't make it less special. And the quote that I just gave you actually reminds me of a phenomenal quote from a song called, or rather a beat poem, excuse me, called Storm by Tim Minchin, which is just, go look it up right now. That's the next video you're going to watch. Storm by Tim Minchin. Fabulous. He says, every mystery ever solved throughout history has turned out not to be magic. All the time. Every single one. We've never found magic in a scientific sense, in a repeatable, descriptive scientific sense. It's always been able to be explained via the natural processes of the world and the universe. That's it. This does not depress me. This encourages me. I still have an ability to love, an ability to feel passionate and enjoy myself. And it's beautiful. I just find it extremely useful to understand the evolutionary background to a lot of the ways that we think as people. I find it endlessly fascinating and useful for me navigating the world. I find it very, very helpful for me. So that is why I try to learn as much as I can about the past. And every time, I mean, this is another big part of meditation, but anytime a thought comes up in the mind, the idea with mindfulness is you're supposed to analyze the thought, to watch the thought track across the field of your mind and think, all right, I had that thought. Why? I just observe the thought and then think, okay, why did I have that thought? Was it potentially informed by an evolutionary cognitive understanding of things? Could it have been? Throughout history, most of them have been. Or something like that. You get it. All right, that's all I've got for right now. So yeah, thank you everyone. And please, please drink tea. It's just really nice. Love you.